Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of the Indieheads podcast. I'm your host, Matty, a.k.a. at Monrovian Prince on Twitter. On this week's this episode of the podcast, we have...
Jackson, at horse_jeans on Twitter.
Lily, a.k.a. Michelle Zahner's new best friend on Twitter. I got clout. I got connections. I'm working my way out of this shithole. Yeah, fucks. Yeah. Anyways.
I'm Dylan.
Lily just came out of the cannon.
Jackson, I'm trying to talk right now. That's very rude for you to interrupt me.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
I'm Dylan. I have a Twitter. And, yeah.
Well, it's been a while. It's been like 2 months since we've done a podcast. And this is possibly our longest break in podcast yet. I think our previous record was like 6 weeks, and this was way past six. It might actually be either a tie or like just hit the record. But we're back. We've been busy. I've been busy with finals and dropping out of college and other things. What have y'all been up to in the 2 months?
We were supposed to have a Julien Baker and Fever cast, but for some reason they're just, I don't know, it just never got released. I don't know if someone didn't put it out or just never edited it, but we never got the Julien Baker and Fever cast out, and really, I think that's a damn shame.
Dylan, well, I mean, there's a lot of reasons why it couldn't have come out. You know, maybe someone had internet issues. Maybe because this person had audio issues, they couldn't actually be on the podcast to record it, or really, the internet issues. And then
hold on. Let's rephrase that. Not internet issues. It's you didn't want to switch to another Wi-Fi network.
Okay, I didn't know. Here's the thing. So at my old apartment, there was two internets. There's the 5G and there's the 2G. The 5G isn't working, and I didn't really know. Here's the thing. 2G, to me, 2G is like, oh, that's bad. Like, I just assume that's bad. Because I'm thinking of, like, phone 2G, and I remember even when I had 3G on my phone, I was like, God, this sucks. Of course, I didn't realize that 2G at my apartment was basically, like, my internet back home. I didn't realize that until, like, 2 weeks later, pretty much. So for a solid, like, 2 or 3 weeks, I was, like, literally just... The internet I had was, like, my LTE and then, like, the hotspot. So... The Julien-cast not coming out is completely my fault, and then I just waited too long, and I was just like, and when I listened to it, the audio quality is the only good Skype recording programs are the ones you have to pay for, and the Julien-cast not coming out is
I downloaded a free one like seconds before the podcast just so we could like still record.
Yeah, it's my fault, but I promise, as a before the year ends, I will put Julien-cast out. Because I have time now. Like, I don't have to worry about finals or any of that shit. Like, I got time. But we're doing a new podcast.
Or maybe, perhaps the real reason why Matt didn't release it is because we sent him over the podcast and it was just 40 minutes of us crying, like sobbing together. That was the real reason why we couldn't release it. There was no commentary.
I mean, yeah, in one channel you had Dylan crying, the other one you had Jackson crying, and then the same channel you had Lily crying. So, I mean... okay, anyways, it's been a while. We're back with good, hopefully good audio quality, and we're ready to do this shit. We got a big old podcast planned for y'all. One that I'm not really going to participate in half of because it's not my field of expertise. Because I'm not really a bleep boop boy anymore. I'm a guitar god, except I can't play the guitar.
Would you say that you've sold your turntables and you bought guitars?
I would say exactly that. And speaking of fucking, that was a horrible segue. Anyways, let's get to the news. Let's get to the news. Grimes, she's back in the news, except it's for like not dumb reasons this time. Do y'all remember when Grimes said that she wanted to be an MMA fighter and she was dead serious about it?
No.
I forgot that. I blocked that out of my brain.
I did not remember that.
That was a thing, like a year ago. Like, I remember reading that headline. I'm like, what the fuck is she thinking? Like, do you realize how hard you have to train for that? Like, All right. Anyways,
I also feel like that was like the 5th weirdest thing Grimes said that week, and it just happened to be the one that made it on the internet. Like, it's not even a remarkable Grimes statement.
I mean, yeah.
Just going through Grimes' Twitter, like, there's a wealth of content there that really just goes unappreciated at a lot of times.
This is true. But
She's a good shit poster.
speaking of Grimes content, she announced that she has new music on the way very, very soon on Twitter. And that's about that. I mean, that's really about it. I'm intrigued.
On Instagram, she said specifically she has all the songs done, but still needs to do the vox and fix drums on pretty much everything. And it's been almost a year of isolation, despair, and chaos. When will it end? Only I can end it. Oh my god. That's the official statement on the status of the album. So it sounds like
that's the
it's
actual
like mostly...
quote. That's not a bit.
No, that's her Instagram caption of her selfie that she posted earlier today.
Oh my god. I mean, to be fair, okay, the thing why you can't get excited about like a Grimes music announcement is she also said the same thing in like January 2013, and look where that got us. Like,
that is true. Like, but it very much means she's been working on the album for what is a year. So hopefully that means soon, at least hopefully 2018. Fingers crossed. Probably. We'll see.
Yeah, that's fair.
That Grimes, she make good music, man. She make good music. Took me. Can we just briefly? I mean, before we get to our next subject, briefly discuss. 2 years later, what are our thoughts on Art Angels?
It's great.
Still not good.
It's still really great.
I like it. It aged. I'm not as into it as I was at the time. I think I had it in my top 15 that year. It's definitely not quite, but it aged pretty well. Like it's so good. I like it.
It's aged like a fine, colorful wine. It's full
from
of
a box.
From a box, full of Sour Patch Kids and rotten M&Ms, and it's the best fucking shit ever. And Scream is still trash, but you know what? That's the only like abhorrently awful song.
Our next bit of news: Ezra Koenig, he's back in the news. What this time? Is Vampire Weekend 4th LP? It coming.
Soon come.
Neck news. Seat Headrest.
Also, one quick thing about the Vampire Weekend album was he basically has made a couple statements recently about like musically where it wants to go, and also he's been talking a lot about like being a band that's now like 10 or so years into it. And he cited that Casey Musgraves was an artist he's been listening to that's like influencing his sound a little bit, which is like strange to hear, but like one of those things like, all right, I have no idea how that'll sound, but I guess we're about to find out. And he said that you want to ace gracefully and not boringly. So it sounds to me like we're not just gonna get a rehash of modern vampires. It sounds like we're getting something new here and some new fresh sounds, which I'm here for.
Yeah,
I'm down.
He basically said like he wants his songwriting style to be like not as general. Like I think I remember him saying, I don't know who he quoted, but he's just saying like, hey, if this song doesn't tell me what it's about in the first 30 seconds, then what's the point? And so basically it's sort of going to a more simple songwriting style, which could be interesting. But, you know, I kind of want detailed accounts about being in love with Rashida Jones. I think that'd be tight. But you know what? I'm down for this. Which, by the way, if y'all don't know, Ezra Koenig is dating Rashida Jones, which is
good for him.
Good for him. Shouts out to Ezra. He shouts out to Ezra real quick. But yeah, I haven't really gotten into Vampire Week. Like, it's sort of weird. Like, I got into indie in like a really weird time, pretty much. Like, it was sort of like early mid 2014, like literally 6 months before the podcast began. So if anyone ever wonders about my expertise when I started the Indieheads podcast, it wasn't much, but you gotta fake it till you make it. So
folks, trust me, when it comes to the guitar music, I'm an expert in it.
Exactly. Dylan's got my back. But yeah, there's a couple indie artists I kind of missed out on pretty much. Like Vampire Weekend was one of them because yeah, Modern Vampire City.
Cough. The Strokes, cough.
Okay, well, the Strokes, I mean, I was off because I was literally like 4 when
No,
came out.
I know, but
here's
you should still listen to it, you coward.
Jackson, I grew up on nu metal, okay? Like, there's a brief period of time.
You know what? So did I. Dad stole a copy of Is This It and fucking Kid A in the car. So I got turned on early.
Did you have
They are
conservative
not
parents?
mutually exclusive things.
Willie,
And, hey,
Willie. My parents, I had to
Kid A,
I had to,
metal? Is this canon now? Was there something I missed?
No, I'm just saying it was late for me to get into indie music because like here's the thing. I had to like convince my mom, like I had to like relent on her to like let me buy like My Chemical Romance, Welcome to the Black Parade, because there's a brief period of time in that new metal phase where I was into like Panic at the Disco and My Chemical Romance and like some of those like Fueled by Ramen Warped Tour bands, but it was a very brief period of time before it was right back in the new metal because, buddy, I grew up on professional wrestling. Not really grew up, but I was into wrestling for a while, and that was the soundtrack of professional wrestling.
Hardest phone ever.
No, Matty, I understand. I'm not like accusing you of being a fake indie boy. I'm saying like listen to Is This It because it's good and you'll enjoy it.
Well, here's the thing. Here's the thing. I tried listening to Is This It like a year ago, and I got bored, and I was like, oh, I don't remember. Like I was like, I don't know. I'm just gonna stop listening. At least I think I did. I'm not entirely sure, but it's just like I don't. Here's the thing: when you tell me to not listen to Is This It, my strength for here's the thing: I get strength from not listening to Is This It when people beg me. I mean, beg me to listen to Is This It. All right, you do it. Everyone else in the podcast has probably done it. My ex-wife, who I gotta pay alimony to, she's begged me to. But I will never listen to Is This It.
To be fair, he does say
in
the title of the album.
2017. I might do it next year.
It. So like,
I was
kind of
not
all
finished,
you need to
Lily.
know.
I was not finished, Lily. I was that was a
Fine.
dramatic pause, and you ruined it.
There was
Because
no dramatic pause. You just kept talking.
I stopped, and I stopped for a
No, you
brief moment,
didn't.
and then Lily started talking, and I was trying to say it. Anyways, next bit of news: car seat headrests. Speaking of the goddamn strokes, let's talk about car seat headrests. Someone else take this. I'm a train wreck. I have a goddamn cold right now. This is I shouldn't be doing.
I'll handle this. So car seat headrests. They released a new version of the seminal classic track from Twin Fantasy, Beach Life and Death. It's a minute longer. One of the verses is a little different, and it's re-recorded, so it's clearer, and it's basically a CDQ version of Beach Life and Death. Possibly a Twin Fantasy reissue on the way. Maybe it's like because they took Twin Fantasy off of Spotify, and people thought maybe they would re-release it like remastered, but then they released this version, which is like completely re-recorded, not just remastered. So we might be getting a full re-release of Twin Fantasy in maybe early 2018, which I would be very down for. That would rule.
I'm also gonna give a quick shout out to Delaney on Twitter because she found out that the part when he talks about do you have something against dogs, in the new version it's 14 seconds long as compared to 7 seconds in the original.
See, so, that's what makes take the song from a 9 to a 10. It's like you needed a couple more seconds of having something against dogs.
Yeah.
And we're there now.
Folks, this is the kind of content that best new song, best new track is for. All right. We gotta move on.
Listen to that song. It's good.
Wait, hang on. I have a take. I might like this new version better than the old version. I might.
Oh, no, absolutely.
I might.
Yeah.
I might.
Here's my quick take on the idea of like remastering or re-recording Twin Fantasy. Like obviously Twin Fantasy is a special thing because it is like recorded in the time in which he's experiencing those things, and it's recorded in the back of the cars, and it's got the real like voyeuristic like quality to it about it, where you're like, wow, I'm really witnessing someone's mental breakdown on this rock album. But like, as it also I think it also deserves a version that is re-recorded so that we can like fully appreciate how fucking great the songwriting is in that album, because it's like really, really incredible rock songwriting that deserves to be like in a listenable form where like normies can appreciate how fucking good that song is. So I'm glad that it's getting the Pitchfork Best New Track. I'm glad that we're gonna get, hopefully, not confirmed, but hopefully get a Twin Fantasy reissue.
I would be down. I think like there's certain things like what this song shows is just how much Will Toledo has grown as a songwriter because of all the new things he's got in there. Like the one thing, here's the original is great because it's just this angsty, brash, like I'm fucking angry and I have nowhere else to go. Like I have all these feelings and I have nowhere else to put them. Where here there's like this sense of like this sort of sense of triumph in some of these parts. Like I don't think like the ocean washed over your grave, like that last part is just like it's angry. It's like I am done. I'm pissed. And this one, it just there's like a sense of like here's the thing. The original, like I could hear this song in an arena, like for me, like I think what Will Toledo, like his songwriting style, it's slowly shifting to this grandeur of like one day like I want to play in arenas, and he's sort of building his songwriting around that, and I'm really excited to see what he does that for an album, full of original material, because we've seen that in these like redone tracks, in the Drunk Drivers redo, the Unforgiving Girl redo, somewhat to an extent to the Two Wars Coming, even though it's not really a redone track, but I'm really excited to see what he does on the next album, because it's like I think he's really growing as a songwriter, and it's just like I consistently go away going, God fucking damn it, that motherfucking Will Toledo, he's just he's so good. How is he so good? And that's the thing, because Beach Life and Jeff, you would think like, no, you can't improve it, like it's perfection, but then like here we go, like
bam,
it's like bam,
he did the thing.
It's like
he did the thing.
He might have improved perfection. How does he do it? But anyways, let's move on to our main topic. I guess sort of part one of our main.
So this episode, the main topic in general is the bleeps and bloops of the year. So all the Bleep-cast. So all the electronic music that we enjoyed the most this year. So on this pod, we've got myself, Lily, and Dylan, who are the resident bleep bloop experts of the Indieheads podcast, here to talk to you about the things that we enjoyed most this year in the world of electronic music. And first, we're going to give some shout-outs. So the way that it's structured is we're going to shout out some albums that are just like... A lot of them are albums we've talked about previously on this podcast, so we're not going to like go super in-depth in them, but we're going to mention them because they are like important electronic records that were released this year. So first up, we got Fortet, New Energy. Did we talk about this one on the podcast?
We did.
I think we did talk about this on Julien-cast. Yeah.
Oh, that's right. On Julien-cast.
Shit.
Yeah. Which will be released apparently. So we'll hear that eventually, along with the next one. But Fortet put out his best album in a lot of years.
In a while.
I'd say 7 years.
7 years. It's very, very good. It's really, and like the thing I like most about it, like personally, is like the way that it combines like synthetic and organic sounds on it. There's like a lot of these like plucked strings that are all over it that are like super kind of bouncy, and like half of this album sounds like it's recorded like in a church somewhere, and the other half it sounds like it's recorded in a techno club, and like the two like fuse together so like naturally in a way that just like makes sense, and it's really cool. I like this album a lot. Anything else on that? Anyone?
Yeah, no, it's very good. It's like he just took like the best of There Is Love in You and the best of Rounds and just like smashed those two sounds together and gave us this. And it's nice that it feels like an involved project from him, because it's something he's even admitted to in promoting this album, that like his past couple like releases, he didn't really want to be vulnerable. They're just kind of these like throwaway like experimental things. And so like given the changes in the world in the last year, he felt compelled to like put out something, it
felt
vulnerable.
like he was like kind of like hiding behind like a layer of like detachment from his work, like by kind of making them less serious or like really just kind of like fucking around more, like it kind of allows him to just kind of be like walling off himself. And I'm glad.
And he pretty much admitted to that in an interview.
Yeah, I mean, New Energy is really like a return to form with like headspace music, really. Whereas like Beautiful Rewind and Morning Evening were more like house influenced, and they're more of a bit livelier, a bit more social. This is more, just just sort of isolated IDM bedroom and electronic.
But also super beautiful and accessible too, which is nice.
Oh yeah.
All right, next album, and we had a whole discussion about this that's like 20 minutes long. So
if only there was a way to hear us talking about this album
come
for
out
35 minutes.
The year ends. All right, I'm sorry. Here's the thing.
We're just gonna give you shit. We're just gonna give you shit.
It's been a long ass time since we had a podcast with like bad sound quality. Okay, and I. Just fucking
shiny and chrome.
I hate all of you. You're all bastards.
Hey Lily, do you want to talk about the freaking Swedish lesbian album?
I sure do. It's gay, folks. It's real gay. It's a whole lot of gay. It's angry protest gay, which is very cool. Like I was reading yesterday, like the Pitchfork interview Karen just did about this album, and like the way she and her visual collaborator like worked on like an extensive mood board together for this album, and I think that's something really interesting in that like it's a sense you got from like other Knife albums that there was so much that went into it ideologically, and I like that like ideology translated into something very immediate. Like it's cool to see an artist use the concept of like a very visceral and confrontational like depiction of intimacy as sort of a political resistance tool, and that seems like a very timely thing for her to have done. And the songs are great. This thing's got a lot of iconic gay one-liners of 2017, let me tell you. Of all the quotables you can't actually quote out loud without people getting mad at you in public, like this album has the most of them.
It's definitely got some extremely memorable hooks on it, I gotta say. And the lyrics on it are, ooh boy, they're saucy. I'm just gonna say that. I guess we're gonna talk about the next one, which is I guess we talked about this on Julien-cast as well. The new Iglooghost, I'm pretty sure.
Maybe.
Which is batshit insane.
Yeah,
it's unbelievable.
It is glitch pop at its most like logical conclusion, I think. It's maximalist, it's in your face, it's also fresh, it doesn't like just stay as this like static thing where
he talked about when he makes music, he like changes the song like every 4 bars of music. Mm-hmm. So it's never like a beat that you can really like. It's like he'll assault you with a musical idea, and before you can be like, what is this? What's going on? Before you have time to really like get a bearing on it and really like understand what it is, he immediately starts changing it again, and so like the whole experience is just like nuts. It's just like I have difficulty describing this album just being like it's fucking insane. Ugh.
And he doesn't know music theory either. I love that. Everybody in the Reddit AMA that Iglooghost had, they were like, "Hey, so like, it's like, how do you make music? How do you do this? How do you do that?" And he was like, "I don't know shit about theory. I don't know." And everyone was like, "All right."
His awesome. AMA was incredible. He's so fucking funny.
Iglooghost is Diplo, is what I learned from that.
Confirmed. All right,
but it's a wild ride that everybody should listen to. It's fantastic.
All right, next album. This one was one that got a lot of buzz this year. One of the breakout artists this year, I would say. Lee Owens' self-titled album. Really, really, really good. It's basically a mix between like minimal techno and ambient pop.
There's so many influences on here. There's you get art pop, you get Arthur Russell, you get Jenny Hval does a feature on it. You get Keltu Twins. I feel
a little bit.
You get early odd techer and early ambient techno. You get B12. You get some bit of Saw in there probably.
Also, if anyone likes Daniel Avery, I believe he like co-produced some of the songs on here.
I think she told a story about how like Daniel Avery invited her into the studio one day to just like do vocals on what ended up being Drone Logic, and in like that same session they made what turned into, I think, Throwing Lines off this album.
I saw her live this
Daniel Avery, I'm pretty sure has had quite a bit of creative input into this album, which also Drone Logic, it's a great album from 2013 that I think everybody should listen to as well.
Yes, I got into that album through the Kelly Lee Owens album, and oh, it's good.
It's so good.
So good.
This, like, KLO was probably, her self-titled was in my top 5 of the year, I'm pretty sure. I mean, it's just so refreshing. It's such a for a debut album as well. It's really just incredible to hear and listen to. And
yeah, I think this is definitely like my debut of the year for sure.
Oh yeah, easily.
Yeah, in terms of like artist going from like relatively little buzz to kind of just like instantly establishing herself as like a distinct and kind of iconic presence already.
Yeah, because Kelly didn't really have like an EP to build off of, not like Kalela did. Otherwise, Kalela
straight album.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The show I saw her at was like her 3rd show in the United States, I think, like ever, which is like really cool. I was very, very. She got added to FYF like after the lineup was announced, and there was like, hey, this person's cool and exists now. Let's add her. And so they booked her, and she was awesome. Really, really incredible show.
Yeah, my favorite memories of this album are just kind of just walking around my campus in the springtime when it's raining everywhere, and just it's very damp, it's cloudy, it's a little bit cold, and it's just such a fantastic album to just soak yourself into and just allow it to absorb. And it's incredibly atmospheric, and I really love how much everything works on it.
All right, next album, Gas, Narcopop. Who wants to talk about this one?
Or are we not doing? Is there?
We'll do it the next one. We'll do the next one.
Okay, sure. Yeah. Narcopop's great. I listened to that album the other day while I was making my top 50, and like coincidentally I'd gotten into Pop, the last Gas album, earlier this year. And it's interesting that he sort of uses like ambience as a kind of political vessel on this album. Like this album, for what is for sure like the vaguest music of the year, literally, like it's just so airy and impressionistic and indistinct. It also feels really pointed. Like, the other Gas albums feel very much kind of escapist. They're about these sort of constructed fantasy worlds, whereas this one definitely seems like it's trying to say something about the state of the world today, whatever that statement might be. And I think that's really cool to try and do this through this genre of music. I think also other people on the podcast have talked about this. I haven't listened to it yet, but the compilation Mono No Aware seemed to be using ambient as a genre to similar ends. And that's definitely something I'd like to see more of.
Yeah, Narcopop was definitely, I want to say, the biggest surprise of the year, at least for me, because I don't think anyone is actually expecting a new Gas album, especially after like 17 years between Narcopop and Pop. And I've been listening to Pop a little more lately, just trying to, just using it as sort of like study music for finals, and just listening to the bliss of that album, just how lush everything is, and then going back and listening to Narcopop, and just it's much more. I'm not really sure what the word is. I want to say.
I mean, it's very sinister.
Very sinister. It's darker. Obviously, it's darker, and that's reflected in the cover art for the album. It's also, I want to say, a little bit lost. Like it's sort of I get like Twin Peaks vibes a little bit, sort of just in the backwoods walking around, and that's sort of with every Gas album. I think it's very like music to get lost in nature in, whereas Pop or any of the other ones are sort of like this nice little day trip into the forest and just living with nature, and it's very transcendentalist. Narcopop is sort of like looking over your shoulder, something snaps and a twig breaks or something like that, and you kind of freak out and your heart rate speeds up a little bit. That's sort of the setting and the environment that I feel that I like get myself into when I listen to Narcopop.
Yeah, and it's cool that he decided to resurrect this pseudonym and like take it in this direction in 2017. I think there's just so many fascinating implications to that creative choice, and that's part of what like makes this album so impactful compared to other Gas releases.
Yeah, it's definitely been a fantastic year for ambient, and I really think this is sort of the flag bearer for the entire year for ambient in general. Just because Gas is probably one of the most well-known ambient projects ever. I want to say, yeah,
Definitely.
Yeah, I'd say so.
yeah. But no, we actually didn't mention Mono no Owawe on this, and that's kind of interesting. But shout out to that compilation. That's got.
Yeah.
I know Jeremiah's been repping that compilation super hard. I feel guilty that I haven't got into it. That's going to be one of those ones I just like kick myself for not putting on my list when I get into it in like February or whatever.
Oh, exactly. It's the January. Fuck! I should have listened to this album.
It did open me up to the Yves Tumor album from this year, which is just an incredible psychedelic industrial combination. And it's really, really fantastic and really, really interesting. It's definitely a compilation that I feel like will we'll look back on it and be like, holy cow, I can't believe, this artist was on this, back before they made it big. I'm just looking at it. Malibu, Maya Gomez is on this. Mesh, just a lot of people that I feel like have a lot of potential in the scene.
Wait, did you guys skip Actress's album?
We were just about to get to that.
We were about to get to that.
Okay, yeah. I wasn't. Yeah, because I saw. I'm like, wait, did you guys skip over that? Because I'm thinking like, is there a grand conspiracy to skip over this? Because I'm gonna mention Dean Blunt because he directed one of the videos off the album.
He did?
No,
what the fuck?
No. Yeah, one of the music videos he directed.
Oh yeah, that might have been extremely directed. I think I might have like linked you to that when it came out.
There's a conspiracy against
Speaking
me.
of comebacks.
It's a conspiracy of Jackson reading the list wrong. That's the conspiracy.
I don't buy it.
All right. Actress AZD.
Pronounced acid, apparently,
Acid?
or like acid. It's it's a play on acid.
Oh, I see. I
think that
see
speaks
what
to-
you did there.
Like the thing about this album and about Actress in general is like if you read his press release for this album, it reads like the abstract of someone's PhD defense. Like he put so much thought and so many like ideas from other like crazy out there philosophers and artists into his music, and it kind of shows in the sound of it in an indirect way. And that just like, right, coincidentally, I listened to this album today, and the thing about like this album compared to other Actress releases, like R.I.P. and Ghettoville were very much like albums I felt emotionally tied to. Like those came to mean something for me, as it doesn't mean something to me or like strike an emotion in me for the most part, except there's some gorgeous tracks on here. But like this music is just fascinating. It is so interesting what's going on and like what he's doing with sound, and to consider like the kinds of like thought processes and intent that could be possibly going into this, because it just seems so informed. Like there's something to this that I couldn't possibly hope to explain, but it seems like he's making a lot of like very radical statements about kind of the lineage of electronic music and where he wants to take that in his own terms, and it's really, really cool. And I'm so glad he's back. I was like, as much as I loved Ghettoville, I was sad that that was going to be like the last Actress album. And like similar to Gas and Narcopop, like him deciding to continue on with that moniker and specifically make this album with it, I feel like is a very interesting move on his part. And it really paid off. This is like another satisfying release in the Actress canon, for sure.
Yeah, Acid is much more progressive and forward thinking of an album that I think anybody has really given it this year.
Yeah.
And I guess that's just because, we're kind of used to Actress's style by now, and Acid definitely still, follows a lot of his normal blueprint with, that we found on R.I.P. or Splash or Ghettoville. But no, like you said, there's definitely a lot of very undercurrents and artistic expressionists I'm turning into Rich Evans over here. Expressions, pardon me, that are just, I don't know.
My name is Don Wilson. I was largest wildlife preserve.
Alright,
Sorry.
No, it's okay. I forgot what I was saying anyway. I tripped
like
up
as much as
afterwards.
this album when I was listening to it today, it kind of feels split in two. In that, like the first half of this is very much by the Actress Playbook in terms of sort of like, quirky, minimalist, like techno, sort of like looping around these figures a lot, and making statements through that. But there's a lot of really radical departures for him on the back half of this thing. Like Falling Rizlas, Foray and Chrome, There's Someone in the Shower. These are like gorgeous, haunting, delicate, ornate tracks in a way that like we've never really seen actors put out before. And I think in the time between this album and Ghettoville, he ended up working a lot with like an orchestra in London or something and did a collaborative live show with them. And I really personally feel the influence of like modern classical music on this album much more than I feel the influence of, say, like techno. It seems that he's taking electronic music in a very like classical direction in a way that doesn't necessarily reveal itself immediately, but like, it's a fascinating move, and it's a really fascinating album. Like I also, this album is just playing with issues of identity in a way I've never heard before either. Like it's so confrontational. I feel like, we'll talk about this other album later, but I've said this before, Actress and Jlin, to me, the two artists who seem to be just on the forefront of like uncompromisingly like black abstract electronic music, and the way they're pushing those boundaries to me is just so refreshing and invigorating and exciting.
We should probably, do you want to talk about the Jlin album right now, and then we can just get back to the other stuff on our list?
Yeah, we might as well switch to Black Origami.
Yeah, Black Origami.
Admittedly, I didn't listen to a ton, so I'll throw it over to someone else to talk to.
Well, you're talking about the certified Jlin stan over here.
Exactly.
Take to the bank over that.
Take it away.
Yeah, it was definitely, I've already reaped the praises of this album over the cast. I think it was a catch-up cast actually back in late May, I want to say.
I think I was on that one. I think it was more later in this. I don't remember when it was, but I was on that episode. It was one of the catch-ups for sure. Yeah.
I think it was the Sandy Alex G episode, if I remember.
That's what it was. Yeah. So May sometime.
Yeah. And I kind of glossed over it there at the end for a couple of minutes. But really, again, this is the most forward-thinking electronic album that I've heard this year. One of the most progressive albums I've heard from any genre this year. It's a technical masterpiece. Stylistically, it brings so much to the table here. You get, parts of footwork, parts of IDM. It's a fantastic album. I got, the Bleep Album of the Year edition of it. I got a hand screen print. I got translucent vinyl of it. It's all here. Jlin is a wonderful producer. She's just everywhere this year, and I'm super excited about it because she's one of the, in my opinion, she's one of the shining beacons of electronic music where, just black art in electronic, dates all the way back to the Detroit producers, to the Chicago house producers, to that entire, Midwestern industrial urban landscape back in the 80s that eventually was just kind of stolen and taken by, all the Europeans, all the British and whatnot, in, early mid 90s. And that's kind of where, I think a lot of people think Bleep comes from, where it comes from, Aphex Twin, it comes from Autechre, it comes from UFO, but they never, they don't seem to go back to the roots of, Don or Juan Atkins. They don't really, go back to that Detroit techno scene from the 80s. And this sort of has shades of that, but it also, just takes everything that's been built on top of all these genres, from glitch hop to IDM to just all throughout this decade in particular, and just builds on top of it, on top of Fly Low, DJ Rashad, and this feels like a very natural progression of the genre to where just based on the drum machines, based on the snares, based on the production, just how and the time signatures on this album are really just so ahead of their time. It feels so futuristic. And I'm really, really looking forward to seeing what kind of influence this album has on producers going down, in the future from, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, 4, because it really feels like a landmark album that really I don't think enough people gave credit to this year. It's showing up on end of year lists for sure. I think it ended up on like number 10 on Pitchforks, but just in terms of just general fan feedback, this one was kind of looked over and kind of underrated in my opinion, and that makes me a little sad. But hey, all right, that's it.
Good. It's very good. There was also I haven't really gotten super into this album, but I've been meaning to, because Jlin was featured on this compilation by this label called Fractal Fantasy that came out this year. That's like a mix between like footwork and wonky and other stuff. And there's a lot of artists on that label I really like. And Jlin had a collab on there with Zora Jones that I really liked. So shout out to that as well. All right, next album.
Yeah, the last album shout out, I guess. Would be Arca's self-titled album from earlier this year. It's like April or something like that. We already had a lengthy discussion about this, didn't we?
When it came out, we definitely talked about when it came out.
Yeah.
And this is one that I think a lot of people have talked about this year.
Yeah, there's been a lot of discussion about Arca this year, and
Thank God.
yeah, thank God, because in my opinion, this is his best album yet.
I would definitely agree. Like, I don't think it's his we've discussed this a couple of times, but I don't think he still put out like his great album. But this is like it sets the groundwork for his great album. Like it's on the way.
It definitely has some of his best cuts, I'd say. With
Definitely
DeFazio.
best cuts.
Him deciding to sing was like the best decision he could have made for his career.
Mhm.
Like him deciding to actually start singing, because he isn't.
Thank you, Bjork.
Thank God for Bjork. Thank God.
Shouts out.
Yeah.
Also, Kanye. Didn't Kanye put Arca on Yeezus?
Yeah, Arca was like
Arca co-produced
like,
2 tracks.
Arca was like one of 3 like executive producers. Like basically there was like the 3 sort of like producer leaders, and he was one of the 3 like main leaders, I think. Like if I remember that correctly.
It was Daft Punk and Arca, and I know Gesaffelstein worked on a couple.
I thought Daft Punk only did Black Skinhead.
No, Daft Punk did like the first 4 tracks. Or at least
On Site is Daft Punk for sure. On Site and Black Skinhead are both Daft Punk. I know that 100% for sure, and I think at least 1 or 2 others are produced by Daft Punk as well.
Yeah, like the
I
first.
think Arca co-produced "Can't Hold My Liquor" and "Blood on the Leaves" were the 2 tracks he worked on.
Yeah, but I think Arca was was still pretty involved throughout the entire album, I think.
Yeah.
But
Shouts out.
But yeah, this Arca album, it's great. Like it's grown on me, I think, since it's come out, because now I've sort of like taken in like what it is, and it's definitely like a bit of a. It's a great step ahead, but also still a bit of a transition album of, oh, he's really got something here. Well, like with like tracks like Reverie and Anoche and Desify-O, you're like, oh, he's got something here. Like these are like 3 of the best songs like this year. He's got something. It's just waiting for that to be like fully realized on an entire album. Pretty much.
He's getting there though.
I still feel like it wasn't.
I think
as
it's the
fully
next
realized as it could have been on this album.
Yeah, no, I
agree. To me, the highs are so high, but I was really underwhelmed by the fact that like the instrumental tracks on this album just went in a very predictable direction for him. And I think in terms of that style, like Mutant has aged extremely well. That album is so good the more time you give it, and so this album did not dethrone it for me in the way I was hoping to, based off the strength of the singles. But I really hope he figures it out next one.
I do. This is definitely more cohesive, at least, than Mutant, which had like over 20 tracks on it over a span of 50
flows
minutes.
though. Mutant is just like this amazing hour-long song.
It does flow though.
I spent the first 6 months of 2017 listening to Mutant a lot, so I will like defend that album as probably the closest Arca has come to a classic thus far, and may well become one with time.
I think the issue for me when it has, over 20 tracks like that and, it just flows like that is that eventually all the tracks tend to blend together for me. And, I mean, like, if you, honestly, and just for me, like, if you told me, go pick out, your favorite standout track from Mutant, I kind of couldn't be able to do that. Just because of that flow and because of that meshing and blending together. And at least on his self-titled here, I can pick out, Anoche is, if you wanted one song off of the self-titled that you were like, oh, what should I listen to? I'd give you Anoche, or I'd give you Desafio, or I'd give you Revere, or, maybe Urchin. One of those four, because I can hold it up and be like, yes, this is a standout track. This is something that I feel is definitely head and shoulders above the rest of his discography, and definitely leagues ahead of anything else on the rest of the album, at least.
Yeah, see, for me, I have that relationship with Mutant and not so much the self-titled. Maybe just because I've spent so much more time with Mutant, but like, I feel like I could give that album like a pretty solid breakdown, like track by track at this point. Anyways,
well, can you talk about
maybe I just need to spend more time with Mutant, honestly.
I think Mutant deserves a lot of time. Like, Mutant, I feel strongly will like grow in stature greatly over the next 10 years.
It's definitely grown on me more than Zen did, which is weird because about a year ago I'd say I put Zen above Mutant, but it slowly worked its way up there.
All right.
Which, by the way, Lily, can you mention your tweet about Arca today?
Oh, he just tweeted about the Reverie video. Video of the year, by the way.
The Reverie is great.
Still a top 3 song of the year.
It was my number 2, which, if you want to see my top 25 songs of the year, this is the last thing. Hey, I get this one plug before y'all go off, okay? I get this one plug. My top 25,
let him plug.
My top 25 songs of 2017. It's out now. Check my Twitter at Monovian Prince. That's all I gotta say. But yeah, Arca's tweet today was hilarious because your comment was like, yeah, he did it.
Yeah, he just talked about how like, wow, what did he describe?
I have the tweet
video as? It was like it was the video where I bleed out of my hole after a bull stabs me in the stomach and like drape like flower petals all over my.
Here it is. It says the video where I bleed out of my hole because a bull impales me, and then it rains while rose petals. It rains white rose petals over my limp body. Just reached 1 million views. What the fuck?
Yeah, and I said, how did he manage to make that video sound gayer than it already is?
Incredible stuff.
But, all right.
We should get to personal picks now.
This is the part. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna kind of like rotate where we each talk about like some picks of ours that are personal favorites of ours from this year, and we'll kind of like do a couple and then like rotate, and then that way we're not just like not one of us isn't talking for like 20 minutes. But to start it out, I'm gonna shout out a couple of EPs that I really, really love from this year. First of all, the 2 Yaeji EPs that came out this year, one of which made it onto the Pitchfork Albums of the Year list, even though it's 4 songs long. I don't know. That honestly was literally just Pitchfork being like, we are co-signing this artist, so she's going to be in our list. Deal with it. Like all of the blogs right now are competing to like have the credit of being the first to give Yaeji their clout. Like she's all over the blogs right now, and for good reason. She's awesome. It's this really cool like mix of this kind of like very low key like house music, but with like her doing her own vocals over it that are like this like weird subdued rapping that's sometimes what what language does she speak? Is it Korean? I don't want to like.
Yeah, it's Korean.
Yeah, okay. She raps in Korean sometimes, but then also she raps in English, and her 2 EPs are really, really, really good. I enjoy both of them, and Rain Girl is a Song of the Year candidate. It's so fucking catchy. It's unbelievable how good that song is. And then also, my EP of the year probably, the Jimmy Stack EP. I am a very, like, active yeller into the void about how much I love Jimmy Stack. He's really, really incredible. His sound is kind of this weird mix of kind of like down tempo and like hip hop and like house, but it's kind of got this very specific like. There's kind of like this funky quality. There's like some bass lines to it, but it's also very like wistful and kind of like. I don't know. It's a really cool EP that really like demonstrates kind of what his sound can do. He had one really popular song called Deadstream, which you probably know from being that one song that got laid over a bunch of vines. Like Matt, there's like this one vine. Matty, have you seen that? Matty, do you remember that one vine where it's like the pizza that's like on the ocean and there's like that like kind of like electronic song over it?
Isn't that
like a pizza?
Wait, isn't that Twin Peaks? Isn't that the Twin Peaks soundtrack?
Oh no, that's a different one. Never mind. But
no, I don't see the Twin Peaks one is like the guy on the subway like spinning and it's in slow motion.
Oh yeah, but he did a really cool music video for the song Deadstream where like it became a trend on Vine to just like make vines of random things and put Deadstream over it, and then he made a music video that was like a cut of all the things that people mashed up with Deadstream. So it's just like all these little like 6-second videos of people just like doing stuff, and it's a really cool music video. But I love Jimmy Stack. He's great. The EP is called It's Jimmy. And it's a very, very good EP that, for some reason, Diplo is like really, really into Jimmy Stack. Like he's tweeted about him a bunch of times. So me and Diplo are the main co-signers of Jimmy Stack. But he's awesome. He's also dating Casey Hill. Fun fact. And
oh yeah, you told me that. I listened to this EP once. I don't really remember it, so I can't comment. But I did hear it technically.
Real quick, last one. Emily Lenz. She's a techno producer. She put out an EP this year called Contradiction. She put out a couple of EPs, little 3-track things this year. She also has a track or 2 on the most recent Drum Code compilation called A-Sides. That's really a really fantastic compilation, but I specifically picked out the Contradiction EP as the one that I like the most. Emily Lenz is just like my favorite techno producer and DJ right now. If you want like really, really hard-hitting but like also very minimal, very like eerie techno music, she is the absolute best. And she recently put out a mix that she did it's an 8-hour long set that she did. I listened to all of it and it was fucking incredible. It's so good. If you like techno at all, you have to check out what Emily Lenz put out this year. Like she released probably like 7 or 8 tracks this year that are all fantastic. So those are my EP recommendations real quick. All right.
Alrighty. I'll jump off my corner of things with just like 2 quick shout outs. These are like honorable mentions because I can't, well, one of these I can't say like outright adore, but definitely still deserves some credit. The other I adore, but it doesn't count. We'll get into it. First, Desolate, Lunar Glyphs. I've been waiting 5 years for Desolate to follow up Celestial Light Beings, which came out in 2012. Still a top 5 album of that year, and one of my favorite electronic albums of the decade. And he followed it up with basically another Desolate album. Like it's just more of his sound, and if you like his sound, it's him doing his sound well, and I'm happy with it, even though it's not like rewriting the rules at all. And I mean, like, you know, most Desolate tracks are basically just like a Burial track played at 1/5 of the speed. But in a year where Burial was not that good, I'll take it. I'll settle for that. I'll settle for slow, good Burial as opposed to regular speed, not that great. So definitely an album worth checking out, and Celestial Light Being extremely worth checking out. Just great, like grainy, textural, melancholic down tempo with a really great like modern classical influence to it. He's a really accomplished like composer in his own right, and does a lot of great like string and piano arrangements all over his stuff. It's very cool, very beautiful, very well done. Second shout out. This is probably technically my electronic album of the year, even though it doesn't entirely count just because it veers more into like electropop than hardline Blanck, but it's or hardline Bleep. But I gotta give credit to my girls, the queens, Rook and Nomi with Super Ego Royal Jelly. They just fucking did it again. Rook, under the name Rook's Feather, came out last year with Void Fantasy, which in the first half of 2017 retroactively became one of my favorite albums of 2016, and I was so excited for her follow-up with her partner Brenda Nomi, who is like known for her video game composition work. Ada Rook's also like an indie game developer in her own right, and they collabed on this album, and it's full of really great songs and production and really fantastic, resonant, relatable lyrics about, trauma and identity and just, trying to exist in the world as just like a fragile, broken trans girl, essentially. And it just hits on every level. It really does it for me. I'm super satisfied with it. So they definitely deserve all the attention ever for putting out great, necessary, and not really there's sort of a deficit of music like this, and I think we need more of it. And I'm very happy to have two producers and songwriters who are as talented as they are leading the charge. And I also want to give a shout out to Goodbye Horses, very, very close to being my song of the year. Just a genius decision on their part to take a song that is for context, the song was written in the 80s, and it's included in one of the Buffalo Bill scenes in Silence of the Lambs. And for them to take this song, and that is most famous for being associated with one of the most notoriously transphobic characters in the history of art, and just transform it into this complete other half resistance, half healing song thing. It's both protest and a safe space, and it's just so necessary and resonant, and it gets to me on every possible level. Great song, even greater album. They definitely go check them out, because they need love and money. So give them both of those things.
The promo for this album is it's really fantastic. I love the name of the album, and I love the cover too. It's very,
the cover's so good. The colors are gorgeous on it.
It's very neon. It reminds me of an Outrun album, this very synth-based thing, which I thought it was gonna be, and it definitely wasn't. But it kind of puts me in that sort of mood.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, this definitely is extremely synth-based.
Yeah. I guess I'll go next with two of my shout-outs, at least. I don't know if anybody else has anything to talk about with these two, but just my two quick shout-outs would be, the first one would go to Lee Gamble's Mystic Pleasure. This is a very straightforward IDM album, sort of a throwback sound to kind of late 2000s Autechre. Lee Gamble he's been around for a while, I want to say. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that he's actually been quite a... What has he done? Yeah, he's been around. Yeah, he did Coke in 2014, and he did Joint Extensions back in 2009. So he's been around for a few years now. And Coke is a fantastic album from 2014. Not his debut, but just a fantastic sort of outsider house, lo-fi, techno record. He kind of changes it up here. Again, more straightforward IDM, a little bit of ambient techno, a little bit of industrial in it. But it's a fantastic futuristic album. Second one would be Talaboman's The Nightland. And this is an album that I've been listening to all year long. It's a collaboration between producers Axel Bowman and John Talbot. John Talbot did the record Finn in 2012, which is kind of the staple for the Balearic beat movement. And Axel Bowman is more of a ambient techno sort of like lush outstarter house kind of person. And in this one, it's very deep house, very micro house, very ambient. You got a lot of shades of, again, Balearic beat and that sort of like lush tropical sound. The drum machines on this are really fantastic. Again, it gives you this sense of place. Very much an album that I highly recommend. Highly recommend. It's been overlooked. It's not getting on, as far as I've seen, it hasn't been on any of the year-end lists. It hasn't been really covered a whole lot by publications. That's a damn shame, because this is a fantastic album and a very, very fresh for the genre.
Matty, is your microphone muted, or are you just like hanging out in the middle of this episode? There's ambient noise coming from somewhere, and I don't know who's doing it.
I was muting my mic for a minute, but that was not because I was like checking out. I was just eating pistachios, and I didn't want to like get the sound. I didn't want to get the sounds on them.
Hey, that's the respectful move. I don't know whose parents are talking in the background, but I have a feeling. Anyways,
that's my roommates.
Oh, okay, never mind.
So my did you do your two? Oh no, you did your two.
I did too, yeah.
All right. So my next two albums I'm going to talk about. One of them, DJ Seinfeld, Time Spent Away From You. This is the debut full length from lo-fi house producer DJ Seinfeld, who is like one of the definitely one of the faces of the lo-fi house movement, in which is, I have dubbed the vaporwave of 2017. Which is that like there's like a certain section of people that are just like really, really into it. Shout out to my friend Johnny from Twitter, who's like super into lo-fi house. But it's just like, for me, it's like, it's kind of a one-trick pony of sorts, where it's just kind of like it accomplishes like a very specific like thing, but it does that thing real well. And especially I like this album a lot. It's one of my favorite, especially songs like Time Spent Away From You, You Hold Me Without Touch, and are just really like great, like kind of like super like aesthetic, like kind of just like these beautiful house productions that have these kind of lo-fi drum machines on them, and all of these really kind of vaporwavy, washed out sheens over them that make them really kind of romantic. And I like this album a lot. It's not like perfect, but like the highlights in this album, like How You Make Me Feel, which is just like a great house song, just super funky. I know, Lily, you said that you really liked You Hold Me Without Touch.
Yeah, You Hold Me Without Touch is great. I mean, this is making it on the top 50 for sure. I really like this album. Like you said, like you mentioned all my standouts. It takes the pony and rides it for one extremely good trick, basically.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, this is for sure like the sad boy techno album of the year, and I'm totally for it.
And my other album of the year is another one is First Opus by Sinjin Hawk. So this album actually has like a pretty interesting like origin story, which is that Sinjin Hawk, he produced Wolves on the Kanye album with Cashmere Cat, and like he wasn't working on the album after that, because that song was made like way early in the process, and he wasn't working on the album. But then like Kanye like emails him like a month before the album was supposed to come out and was like, yo, we need you to send as many songs as possible because we're like pulling the album together. And so Sinjin is like, all right. And so for like an entire week, he basically took a hard drive that had like, I think it was like 100 plus unfinished like beats and songs, and like finished all of them in like a week, like taking these songs and like mixing and mastering them and putting it together, sends it over to Kanye, and they don't use any of it. But then he just is like left with all of these like mostly finished song ideas, and he's like, oh, I should turn this into an album. And so that was the origin story of this album, which came out earlier this year in like May. I really like some. It's kind of wonky. It's hard to describe. It's got like various elements of kind of like bass music and kind of like a little bit of footwork. A lot of the people that are on the Fractal Fantasy label are like footwork, but not. It's a mix between like kind of club music and like wonky. But the thing about this album that's notable is that it's really, really like textured. Like the cover of this album is like a pool of water that like is like a pool of like liquid that has like light shining on it, and that's like really what you get from this album. There's like these incredibly like bright textures, and like just all the soundcraft in this album is so well done. And he also uses vocals really well. Like those vocals at the beginning of the Wolves beat by Kanye, the ooh, like those vocals are a thing that he uses all over this album. Like it's a very specific production thing that he does, the way he manipulates those vocals like that. And there's like horns and like big chorus vocals that come in, and it's a really interesting electronic album that has a lot of cool experiments on it that I just really loved from this year, and is definitely worth checking out. Yeah, it's a good album.
It's got some great cuts on it. I really love, They Can't Love You,
That's good.
Floodgates, Nail Gun.
Nail Gun is so crazy. The way that like it like pans from like one ear to the other. The droom. It's like, oh man, it's just like so. It hits you. It's really cool. I like this album a lot. Shouts out. All right.
All right, next up, getting into my official mentions. First one, Pan Daijing, Lack. This is a weird one. This is a very out there album of 2017. Pan Daijing is a Berlin-based artist, and I checked this album on a whim based on the Pitchfork review, and it's really an interesting fusion of like noise and modern classical and Chinese music, and just something else full of very eerie, sparse, dissonant, unsettling compositions. She delivers some extremely like disturbing vocal performances on this thing, a lot of them very like minimal and loping and arrhythmic and just very strange but very affecting, and like throws in some great like noise bangers too. I don't remember what the track is. It's something like Dance of the Empress or something, but that is a great abrasive bop of 2017. So this album, I didn't really see anyone talk about it, and it's a fascinating album that definitely like deserves to be listened to simply by virtue of like how far off the beaten path it treads, and does so in, what still manages to be a like very rewarding fashion. It's not just experimentation for the sake of it. She clearly has such a unique voice and is using that for a very specific purpose, whatever that may be. I can't like claim to understand the intent or the themes behind this album, but I do find it to be a very engaging listen and a very underrated electronic album of the year. The other, Fire Tools, Drip Mental, I so heavily regret not getting into this album when it came out in February. I downloaded it then, I listened to the first track, and I was like, you know what? I'm going through some stuff. This is just too harsh for me right now. I'm not going to be able to handle like 52 minutes of this. And I regret it so hard because I started listening to this like a few weeks ago, and that first track is not really indicative of the rest of the album. Like once you get past that, it opens up into this like very spacious and interesting territory. This album exists kind of like sort of like on the borders of like noise and vaporwave, which is a description that is going to make a lot of people not want to listen to this. But it uses those things to very interesting ends. And her vocal performances are very harrowing and engaging throughout. She's definitely like a fantastic vocal presence on record, whether or not you can like, I mean, that, is with the caveat that like, if you can handle harsh vocals for the most part, but like as much as this album goes, full out like thrashing noise record mode, sometimes it also has a shocking amount of just very beautiful, very evocative, very like serene moments littered throughout, and some like surprisingly amazing pop songwriting as well. This album to me like captures, I think, the sensation of like the relationship between like the queer body and the internet, and how that whole dynamic is like a fascinating thing that people are having to deal with now. And it's very valuable because of that. And I've been enjoying it a lot. So definitely another one to check out. Just fucking trans girls killing it in the bleeps this year. Just we're doing great. It's been a strong year in that regard, and this is definitely one of the highlights from that camp. So I highly recommend that as well.
All right, I'm gonna go with a pair of power electronic and industrial albums here. Both of them,
yeah, baby.
Very, I'd say, kind of two of the mainstays of 2017 industrial, at least. The first one would be the new Ben Frost record, "Center Cannot Hold." This was a very, very interesting release because of how like overtly political it is. You get that sense just from the title tracks alone. It's very dirgy, more so than Aurora or By the Throat. It's very kind of existentialist. It's very dark and decrepit and hopeless. I kind of want to say hopeless is sort of the sense I get when listening to this music. And Ben Frost has definitely found the soundscapes that he was trying to sort of experimenting with Aurora, which I thought, wow, it was a great record. Aurora was a really, really good record, but it was missing something, and I feel like Ben Frost finally finds it on Center Cannot Hold. This album was produced by Steve Albini, I'm pretty sure. Yep. And he also did, what was it? It was the Threshold of Faith EP, which kind of was the precursor to this album.
Yeah, and I think he was more like directly involved as a collaborator and like a performer on that EP as opposed to this, which is definitely like a Ben Frost joint, so to speak.
Yeah. But it's a really incredible collection of soundscapes from Ben Frost. The sort of critique or analysis that I've seen a lot is that Ben's gone sort of more into the Tim Hecker universe, just in terms of sound progression and just how textured and layered his tracks are now. But I don't really get that.
Yeah, that doesn't really make sense. This is like so blunt and aggressive, whereas I feel like Tim Hecker has gone like more and more sort of spacious and abstract with time.
Yeah, like I think Hecker and Ben Frost are two of the most prominent members of just ambient right now, and they really contrast themselves very nicely, where Hecker is a lot more mysterious and I want to say spiritual almost, where you kind of get a sense of a greater force that's kind of driving his music, whereas Ben Frost's, his artistically his is much more grounded into a harsh reality that you kind of have to outmaneuver sometimes, and sometimes you don't really outmaneuver it. But anyway, no, Center Cannot Hold, it's got some fantastic cuts on here. All Your Love Will Be Eviscerated is really, I think, Lily, you said this was weirdly sexual, if I remember correctly.
Oh God, we're gonna get into this. I may have said some things while very excited about this track. It's a fucking whole like late night thing, but I think noise is underrated as like a genre for communicating ideas about sexuality, and so I felt a bit of that in this track. But it's just like, yeah, there's so many invigorating moments in here.
There's Eurydice's Heel,
Ionia is amazing. Ionia. Threshold of Faith is
the closing track too. Entropy in Blue is a really fantastic closer for it. Just a fantastic album all around, and again, one that I feel is really overlooked a lot in these year-end lists.
Yeah, definitely.
Which is damn shame.
And especially, like, given how much hype Aurora got, I don't really understand, because I found Aurora very overrated. Like, to me, Threshold of Faith, or not Threshold of Faith, Center Cannot Hold, like, hits in all the ways that, like, I felt Aurora was supposed to hit me, but didn't. Like, it kind of fell just short of that impact, whereas, like, Center Cannot Hold just, like, blows me out of my chair every time. Like, you feel your hair like swoosh back a little bit every time this album comes on.
Yeah. The other album that I was going to talk about, and this is one that definitely has gotten a lot of coverage this year and is showing up on a lot of the year-end lists, is World Eater by Blanck Mass. And I'm not quite sure where to start with this record. Again, it's made by... heck. I'm sorry, my screen just froze up here for a second.
Oh, he's one of the members of Fuck Buttons, if that's what
Yeah. No, he's one of the members of Fuck Buttons. Sorry, I was like staring at my screen and like it just froze up and I was like, what the hell's going on here? Give me 2 seconds. I'm sorry. Let me figure out what the hell's going on with my computer right now.
I will say, while you're figuring out what the hell's going on with your computer right now, I gave this album quite a few listens. It didn't quite click for me in the way I hoped to, but there were some like amazing standouts on this thing. Reese's Negative and especially Silent Treatment is for sure one of my favorite singles of the year. I go back to that track all the time. Like, I didn't love every musical idea that was presented front to back on this album, but there were definitely some good ones and like definitely some really, really great ones too. And I hope he like leans more in the direction of that greatness in future releases. This is my first exposure to Blanck Mass, and I didn't really know what to expect, but he has an interesting sound and style. And well, this isn't like the album of his for me, and neither is Dumb Flesh really. Like, I hope he does come out with that like great album, because it'll be really exciting to see.
Yeah, I think this is definitely a step up from Dumb Flesh, which didn't really ever hold my attention for too long. But World Eater definitely held my attention for much longer, and definitely seems to be much more of a breakout for Benjamin Power than Dumb Flesh ever was. Just because this is much more, again, I want to say it's much more cohesive. I want to say he has definitely worked on the songwriting capabilities. It's very primal too, and you kind of get that sense when you look at the album cover when it's just a pair of dog teeth, But it's very, just a lot of power electronics that feel very, very visceral, very in your face. It's very violent too, I want to say, but not so in a way that's like, it's not like a Tarantino film or anything like that. It's violent in a way that feels artistic. Again, I'm having a sort of a hard time just describing this album because there's so many interesting ideas going on when you listen to it.
Yeah, definitely a very distinct and diverse album.
Extremely diverse.
Yeah, and like that impact you're talking about, or that violence, I kind of wish I'd felt more of. Like, I was in the opposite mood of when I heard the Fire Tools album. I was like, nope, just like fuck my shit up with some static and sine waves, and I did not get that from this. But what I did get was a very interesting alternative. But I would love to see him apply his ideas with much more brute force in the future, similar to like Aurora versus Center Cannot Hold. I'd like to see that kind of evolution from him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the vocal sampling on this is also very intense.
Oh, it's so good and inventive and like impressive how we get some of these sounds.
Especially on Please. Yeah, especially on Please, which I think is a standout track for me on this record. And especially and also the Rat too, which I think a lot of people say is one of the weaker tracks on it, but I very much disagree. It's all around just a fantastic record. It's got a lot of interesting ideas going on in it. Stylistically, it's very kinesthetic, and just all around, it's a fantastic package. I'm really excited about it.
All right. I'll get to. I'm gonna save my electronic album of the year because I think we want to discuss that a little bit more toward the end. But my next two that I want to talk about real quick. Mount Kimbie, Love What Survives. This one definitely got a lot of blog buzz. I believe it got an 8.4 BNM from The Fork. Mm-hmm. This album is the return from Mount Kimbie, who make, I would describe it as like down-tempo, post-dubstep type stuff. But this is the first album they've made since one of them moved to Los Angeles from London and the other one didn't. So they're a duo that makes music across an Atlantic Ocean. But the cool thing about this album that like everyone who talks about it notices is that like it's a very like organic sounding album in that like it sounds like it's made by a band more than it sounds like it's made by producers, in the way that like there's a lot of live drums on this album that sound really nice, and there's a lot of actually mixed in with down tempo. They have these like prominent bass lines that sound like straight out of like post-punk songs, like Interpol almost, like that kind of like those kind of like driving melodic bass lines that are really work well on this album. This album is a cool mix of kind of like some of different kind of new wavy like rock music type sounds, and then like down tempo and dubstep and kind of spacey low-key electronic sounds, and is a mix that like this is kind of a hit and miss album. It's not like super cohesive because a lot of tracks in the album have like features, and then there's this like these kind of beats that like are played in between the feature tracks. But as a whole, like cohesive project, there's a lot of songs in here I love. The opener, 4 Years in One Day, is incredible. The way that it starts out with these like synthesizers that seem like they're kind of out of focus, and like slowly like the track just kind of like draws in on like it like zones in on something, and then when that bass line kicks in and the drums kick in, and it's such a great like intro to the track. There's the King Cruel collab that's really nice. Marilyn with Mikachu is really cool, and also there are 2 James Blake collabs on this album, so that alone is a pretty good selling point for it. I like this album a lot. It's a lot of fun. And the other album that I wanted to talk about is Jacques Greene with Feel Infinite. This is the debut full length for Jacques Greene, who is someone I've been a fan of for a while. He's like vaguely affiliated with Body High and We Did It, which are like these 2 LA labels that I stand for incredibly hard. Anyone who knows me will confirm that. But this is the debut album for Jacques Greene makes house music that is very, very melodic, very textured, very spacious, and this album is very much a love letter to like the dance floor, and like it is an album that is making music that is inherently dance music, but it is doing so in a really like thoughtful way, in a way that is like very, very interesting, and I love this album a lot. I think it is a really like great like summation of a lot of the kind of like themes and like things that like hit a lot of the sound and things he'd been working on like EPs like Afterlife, After Party and stuff like that. And just all of the songs on here are so great with like the vocal samples and the really like beautiful synths, and the like some of the house techno tracks are my favorite. Those ones like To Say and I Won't Judge and Real Time, and then some of the more like kind of down tempo dubstep-y kind of stuff is also really good on here. And also the closer on this album, You See All My Light, is like this like piece doesn't have any drums, and it basically just like you basically like ascend up into like a musical heaven at the end of this album with these like these like arpeggiating synths and this just like wall of just like beautiful like wash of noise, and it's just every time I finish it like takes my breath away. This is a very good electronic album if you like house music, if you like house music that makes you feel some things. And I think this is a really, really great album from this year that I highly recommend.
Yeah, I was so happy to see this album do well. I had been following Jacques Greene very closely, pretty much since the Look EP, so like 6 or 7 years. And
it's been a while.
A few years ago, he had promised an album, and then that just sort of like disappeared, and he put out Phantom Thread, and I thought, okay, well, I guess we're just not getting a full length from him. And I'm so happy that he pooled all his talents into like a cohesive album like statement after years and years and years of just like
EPs,
very concise,
EPs.
Amazing but very concise singles. So to see him like have the focus and vision and the skill to like make his sound translate over the course of a like album that is both very cohesive but very diverse and engaging, and like does take his sound in new directions, because admittedly
cool, stuff going on here. Like he goes in a lot of like new places that are exciting for him.
Yeah, like this doesn't feel like he just put 3 of his EPs and put them together into an album like package. This really feels like he was trying to make like an album with this, and I think that's really cool. And I'm so glad that A, it turned out great, and that B, he's been doing really well off the back of it. Like, this guy deserves so much success. He's easily one of like the best producers of this decade, I think, and certainly responsible for some of the best dance tracks of the decade. So more than anything, like, I also hope this turns people onto his back catalog, because there are some gems buried in that one. Good
Some
lord.
incredible stuff.
Yeah, if you like Feel Infinite, which I know a lot of people do, and it was kind of their first exposure to Jacques Greene, like, go back. Because if you're missing out on the look, if you're missing out on Another Girl, you need to not be missing out on those EPs very badly.
True as hell. All right, Lily, you're up.
All right. Next is Value by Visionist. I did not know this album was coming out until like I saw reviews start to come out for it. I got into Visionist in 2015. He put out an album, Safe, that ended up being one of my electronic highlights of that year. Very interesting album. Like, I don't really understand why people keep saying he came out of the grime genre. Maybe I just haven't gone back that far in his catalog to like hear that, because Safe was very like it was interesting, very delicate, like abstract and kind of like sanitized electronic music. It was so clear and like crystalline and precise, and a lot of just a very ornately composed synth figures, and a very interesting approach to vocal sampling. And so I really enjoyed it based off that. Did not know this album was coming out. Was curious to see what he did next, and he took that like sort of very clean, very crisp sound on Safe, and on Value, he just blows it the fuck up. This thing is so noisy and chaotic and energetic and out of control. It is just like a 2,000% step up in energy from Safe, and it's really a wild ride. And he still merges that noisiness with like that sort of like almost like classicalness of Safe, but does it in a way that like serves the project as a whole. And he seems to be like dealing with a lot more like abstract ideas here, whereas Safe was kind of like a breakup album in a way almost. This is like dealing with a lot of esoteric concepts about like, I don't know, as the title indicates, like self-worth and self-definition and like how you interact with the world. And just it's front to back, just very great, very engaging tracks. He goes so far as to have like a guest vocalist on one track. That turns out great. A lot of just awesome beat work on this thing. I would not have expected a Visionist album to like A, sound like this, or B, blow me away this much, but I've been really enjoying it lately. Next is Where Are We Going by Octa. I had not heard of this artist before this album, and fucking she did the thing.
She did the dang thing.
She did indeed do it. This album is hard to talk about in the same way that like World Eater is, where I'm not sure there's much to say beyond the fact that these are just like a bunch of very well composed, very engaging, and like very, in essence, like queer dance tracks in a very cool way. Octa like came out as trans last year, and her previous album, like before that, dealt with a lot of like issues of gender and queerness in sort of a veiled and indirect way, where like it was not clear that that was the perspective she was coming from, even though like for her obviously it was. And so to see her just be, you know, open about that and you know, addressing these themes more directly is really awesome. And a lot of these tracks just work great, flow great, very good ideas, very good mood to this thing. Overall, I don't know, Dylan, do you have more elaborate thoughts on this?
I don't really have a whole lot of elaborate thoughts on it. I mean, really, it's just a solid collection of deep house, Chicago house cuts. Very, again, the production on it is like you said, it's solid. It's very gay. I have not spent a whole lot of time with this record in regards, you know, relative to others. I've listened to it to maybe 4 or 5 times through all the way. but it always sucks me in, and I get really I get a little bit sad whenever I see it ending. So it's definitely an album that I should definitely revisit more next year, because
and also it does end on a surprisingly sad and vulnerable note with her vocals in the last track, which is a very interesting decision on her part. There's a feeling very much of melancholy to this album, and struggling to sort of overcome that melancholy. And I think maybe what this album is trying to do more than anything is provide a space of escape and safety for people, so they can sort of let go of some of the things this album is talking about or alluding to in its song titles.
Yeah, I mean, this is an album that I kind of discovered late in the year, around October or so, and at that time, I think I was lacking sort of the headspace I needed for it. Just to sort of, because it feels like a very lonely album. It feels like an album made by someone who feels just a little bit too isolated in the world, and a little bit, I want to say, like you said, melancholy, a little bit regretful, a little bit sort of a longing for something else. And I definitely feel that just coming through the production on here. So definitely an album that I will revisit in the future, for sure. I guess I'll finish off my little list here. I don't have a whole lot to talk about with any of these albums, but I feel like they all deserve shout-outs. First one, Laurel Halo. It's new record, Dust. It's Laurel Halo. She's art pop, hypnagogic pop, very sort of psychedelic, mystical producer, singer-songwriter. She's worked with Julia Holter. She's worked with OPN. She's sort of a DJ of sorts, I'm pretty sure. I think Jackson said
she does DJ, yeah.
Yeah. And she comes from this sort of a background of classical jazz musicians and a lot of, again, modern classical stuff. And, all of her work kind of has that shine through, and especially on Dust, she pushes the envelope more than she did on a lot of her other previous works. Fantastic vocal work here again. Of course, if you know Laurel Halo, then you kind of expect that. But it's very clean. It's very unique and interesting. The productions are as minimalist as ever. Sort of synth-based, sort of like progressive electronic, along the lines of Caitlin Aurelia Smith. Would be someone who I would sort of relate her to. Just all around a very solid record, and I highly recommend it.
Yeah, shout out to Laurel Halo, who is from the Ann Arbor, Detroit area and used to DJ at KCWN, which is the radio station on Michigan's campus, where I have a bunch of friends who DJ and play there, and I've DJ'd there. So shout out to her.
Second album would be the new James Holden record, The Animal Spirits. This was one that came out. This came out in November, so it's relatively
not long ago.
Yeah, it's the first album that James Holden has done since The Inheritors back in, that was 2013, 2012, one of those two.
Yeah, 2013, I think.
2013, yeah.
Because that was Resident Advisor's Album of the Year, and they did VFTL for Album of the Year in 2012. Anyways, details.
Yeah. But no, Spirit Animals is definitely not The Inheritors. It's more post-rocky based. It's a lot of krautrock. It's a lot of progressive electronics, some jazz, some neo-psychedelia, some, a little bit of everything. And it's just a lush composition of sound, just everything. It's everything in the kitchen sink in here. You got your synths, you got your keyboards, you got saxophones, and just roaring bass guitars in here. It's a cacophony of sound, and it's very colorful. And you can get, if you listen closely, you can just find the intricacies in the music and just pick apart every little bit of it and just, listen to each individual instrument. Or you can just have the entire thing just wash over you. And it's just incredible. So it's a mystifying world to get lost into, or to very carefully look at the details of. And in the short time that I've had with this record, I really, really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I haven't, I'm not going to be able to spend enough time with this album to give it, a certified seal of approval before the year's out. But I thought it was really interesting that he went in this direction after The Inheritors. And this to me seems like a natural extension of The Inheritors, in that when you look at a lot of the touring he did behind that album, he was essentially trying to turn the modular synth into the centerpiece of a jam band, and he pretty much does that outright on here, and does so in a way that is much more lush, much more expansive, much more vague and evocative, or I guess more enigmatic and psychedelic, I would say, than The Inheritors. And it's a really cool direction for him to go in. This was a satisfying follow-up to an album that I enjoyed, had some standout tracks, but didn't adore. But this is cool. I'm glad he's doing this work. This is good, valuable, important work.
All right, and finally ending my list would be kind of my runner-up for my electronic album of the year would be the Compassion, the second album by Forest Swords. And this is an album that I just really enjoyed listening to the entire year, because it's such a different change of pace from all of the very existential dread and anxiety and worry that has kind of pervaded throughout all of music this year, all of art in general this year, where it sort of celebrates, like it says, the compassion for your fellow man, and this feeling that of sort of upliftingness, that everything's going to work out in the end. You're going to have rough times. There's going to be a lot of rough times, but you'll make through it. Hopefully you'll make it through. I think this album is a fantastic follow-up to Engravings, which is an album that I liked, but I didn't love. This album I love, though, because it's just full of great ambient techno cuts. It's full of great psychedelic cuts. I can relate this to pretty much anything you could possibly think of. I can relate it to Voice of Canada. Again, I can go back to Arthur Russell or Brian Eno. I can say, it relates to Bjork. There's just so many different avenues and sounds that are explored on here, and it's a wonderful thing to dive into. The production is very layered, very textured, very, very nice and soft on the ears. By the way, this album sounds fantastic on vinyl. I just have to put that out there. It really opens up and expands on wax. It's just a wonderful record, honestly, and I'm happy that it's getting so much fantastic coverage, because it definitely deserves it.
Yo, while we were doing this damn podcast, Pitchfork just dropped their top 20 electronic albums of the year list. Those cowards trying to upend us.
All right. Hold on. We got some breaking news here. Let's
The pitch.
Where is it? I just see experimental albums.
It's on their Twitter page. The official Pitchfork electronic album of the year is Plunge by Fever Right.
Holy shit.
Jlin is 2, Kelly Lee Owens 3, Mount Kimbie 4, Laurel Halo 5. And then they put EP2 by Yaeji at 6. Again, not an album, but whatever.
folks, let this be noted that we were the precursors to this pitchfork list. We deserve all the credit here, and all these.
They were listening into the pod. They tapped into the podcast and listened to see what we praised, and then added those to the list.
Yeah, these cowards, these goddamn hooligans are out here trying to steal our thunder.
I told y'all there was a conspiracy against me and technically us, and y'all were calling me liars and calling me a liar, and I was right. Pitchfork versus Indieheads podcast. It's on in 2018. That's all I'll say.
It's fucking on.
Me and technically us is the greatest summary of Matty's relationship with this podcast.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong.
We're almost to the end here. We got 2 more albums.
They've got a lot of albums on here that we've talked about though. They've sort of tried to steal our thunder a little bit on here.
To be fair, we talked about a lot of albums on this podcast. We did cover a lot of them.
Why did they put Godspeed on number 12 on here? What the fuck?
Experimental?
I think you're looking at the wrong...
No, I'm not. Oh, wait. Am I looking at the experimental or the electronic?
You are, because the 12 on
You're looking at the experimental.
The 12 on electronic is Midlands Fabrique 94.
Oh, okay. Maybe they just have so much overlap. I was confused.
Anyways. Next album. This is a good one. This is my favorite electronic album of the year. The self-titled album Bicep by Bicep. This is just like a perfectly done house record. It is like the Bicep dudes, my sweet Irish boys, have been releasing EPs for a while, but mainly like the way that they garnered traction on the internet was they host a blog called feelmybicep.com, and they basically for a number of years have been one of the better like curators of dance music on the internet. And this album really, I think, shows that, because like the way that they combine ambient music and house and techno and all of these different, it's just so good. And I almost have difficulty describing it, just because it really is kind of that perfect. It's a little similar to the Jacques Greene album, where it's this really really detailed, textured, great house and techno music. With just some of like the highlights on this album are just like so incredible. Like Orca and Glue, especially like the 2 first tracks on here, are just like so fucking incredible. With like they have all these little like plinky synth leads that are really like really like just get drilled, like just burrow their way into your brain in a way that's just like so hypnotic. And then like in the second half of Glue, once they work in like those like vocal samples that are just like so like beautiful and like kind of sad and like melancholic to them.
The entire side A of this record is just wall to wall, just fantastic.
And side B has some good tracks, but yeah, like side A is definitely like Orca, Glue, Kites, Vespa, or whatever. Yeah, just like really incredible. And I really love the interludes of this album, like all the pieces of ambient music they use to kind of like segue between the techno and house tracks are all like incredible. They have a playlist on their Spotify that's like just absurdly long. It's like it just has like hundreds and hundreds of songs out. I was like, yeah, it's 18 hours of music, and I was like listening through it the other day, like just shuffling it, and like they have a lot of ambient music and like ambient classical kind of stuff. So like clearly the ambient music is a huge part of like what they listen to and like what they're influenced by. And so like those touches to this album are really nice and like really like flesh out the album from being more than just like a collection of dance tracks and into more of like a cohesive piece.
Yeah, like this isn't a very it's not an album that's going to reinvent the wheel or anything, but it's really a fantastic way to showcase producer's chops.
Exactly.
And as an ambient house record, as a deep house record, there's some fantastic moments on here that I really love. Like you said, Glue in particular, I think it was the standout track for me on here.
For sure, yeah.
The 5th track, Yaeji, is also a favorite of mine, because again, I get very Boys of Canada vibes from it.
Definitely.
but just it's really beautiful. It's really, really beautiful. It's very cinematic as well.
I agree. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to shout out. They put out an EP later this year, a Glue EP that has Glue as well as 2 other like B-sides to that, which I highly recommend. There's some good cuts on there as well. But yeah, this whole also really like Rain. That's another standout track for me on the second half. It doesn't reinvent the wheel, but like it's a damn good wheel. It's a really good wheel. It's got spinning rims on it. It's like a fantastic wheel. I love this album, and like it was one of those albums where like I do like to DJ sometimes, and like immediately it was just like, oh, like 5 of these songs are immediately like staples of mine that I want to like play when I'm playing live. Like they're all just like, these are gonna be so fantastic. Yeah, it's really great, and it's really cool. It's really cool to see like these years of like putting out EPs and playing shows and writing their blog and like turning this into like an album that really feels like accumulation of the last couple years of their various musical endeavors.
I agree.
And then it's time.
Is that it? Is that
no?
We got 2 more.
My last ones. We got
wait.
2
One
more.
more.
We're okay.
Oh, 2 more.
Wrap
So
it
we
up,
saved
folks.
the best for last.
Wrap it up, folks.
Matty, we saved the best for last, which is we need another 2 hours for Lily to talk about Prurient.
Oh God.
I'll keep it
All
short.
right. We're okay.
Okay.
Okay. We're already at what hour? We're at what hour 46.
It took us half an hour to start talking, though. Like, I don't think this has been that long an episode.
Nope.
That's true. Okay. Go off, Lily. Go off.
I will.
Sounds
Okay,
good.
first, before I really go off, Contact by Pharmakon. Great album. You know, like, I revisited Bestial Burden last year, and it's good, but it's not quite there for me. The album, some of the track ideas aren't that strong, and while some of them, like, really hit, they hit in a way that's, like, blunt and direct and visceral, because that's what the concept of the album demands, but they're not necessarily, like, I don't know, they're very simple and repetitive noise tracks, whereas with this, she just advances her sound to, like, a very conceptually minded, through composed, like, composerly feeling. All of these songs feel like they're working together to serve a purpose, and her production is as good and hard-hitting as ever. Her vocals as affecting and just throat-shredding as ever. Amazing vocal performances on this thing, especially her screams on the opener. Holy, like, talk about one of the most, like, bone-chilling sounds of this year. She's such an amazing performer in that regard, and really uses those skills to a great end on this album. I love the trajectory and flow of this album. I love the balance between sort of viscerality and heaviness that was maybe an imbalance that existed on Bestial Burden. It's a great step up. It's a great continuation for her sound, and I was very, very happy with this album and revisited a lot throughout the year. This is some mood music for when you want to not be in your body anymore. It's really great for that. But we got to talk about the biggin, the kahuna, the cheese, Rainbow Mirror. Holy shit. The man did the damn thing. Dominic Furnow pulled off what I did not even think he was capable of doing, and made a 3-hour-long album of noise music, 3.5 if you include the bonus disc, and made
There's
it
a bonus disc?
Yeah, there's 4 discs on the, like, CD release to this thing. Yeah, with like 2 extra tracks. But if you want to listen to just the core, like, trilogy, it's 3 hours, and it's consistently fascinating. For an entire 3 hours. These compositions are so gripping, so affecting, so interesting and different, and just a radical departure for him. I really understand, listening to this album, why he chose to go with, like, the label of doom electronics for it, because this is absolutely what that is. It's not drone and it's not noise, but it's this different thing that, like, I don't know I've ever heard before in this exact way, and he just takes it in so many fascinating directions. And something I haven't heard, like, talked about enough with this album is that he very intentionally, like, to mark like the 20th anniversary of the Prurient project, went back to like making the project a 3-piece outfit for this album. So these are like live in studio improvisations between 3 people, and the fact that like it just speaks to like their collective skill as composers and improvisers and like a unit, that these are improvised tracks that feel like precise through composed pre-planned compositions, and the level of like listening and intuition and skill that requires to do as a musical improviser is incredible. And they do it like they just knock it out of the park track after track on this thing, and in a way that's like refreshing and shockingly accessible for a Prurient project. Like truthfully, this, despite the length, I really believe that this like provides a great gateway into his oeuvre, so to speak, because frankly this thing's not very harsh. It's not very noisy. The noise elements are used very sparingly on this thing, and when they are, they're used to, you know, stay tuned for my fucking like 500-page long Frozen Niagara Falls write-up. But the way Dominic Furnow is able to use noise elements to expressive means and like to convey, you know, not just like, I feel like noise is most associated with anger, but to convey real like sadness and despair and maybe even a little bit of like hopefulness through just pure harsh noise is amazing. And the moments when he does this on this album are amazing. And littered between that are like also like shockingly beautiful and tender and fragile moments. There's an amazing dynamism and like sense of tension and release to these things. There are moments where these tracks feel like so fragile. All the instrumentation is just holding on to each other by a thread. And it's a really affecting move in a career that has been marked by just like balls to the wall noise, to be able to like go for quiet and go for spareness in that way. And also like really branch out into a lot of styles. There are some like interesting detours into like, I would say kind of modern classical territory with this thing. Like April Fool's Aspect Sinister. I don't even know what the fuck to call that track, frankly. Like there is some bizarre stuff on here, but there's also some like really direct, engaging, hard-hitting, powerful, and like emotionally evocative stuff buried throughout this album. I'm going to admit, after saying all that, I've only listened to it front to back once still, but you go back and listen to pieces of this thing, and some of these tracks are just freaking incredible. God, like Midnight Kabar, Chaos Sex, Falling in the Water is incredible. Blue Kimono Over Corpse, Path is Short, Buddha Strangled in Vines, just amazing, amazing tracks. And I know people are going to like balk at the idea of listening to like 3 hours of a typically abrasive genre, but I promise that like this album is not what you think it is, and that it does things that are far more rewarding than you would expect from the premise. I'm not going to call this my electronic album of the year, because frankly, it's going to take me like another 2 years to wrap my head around this. But this is like, you know, my stannery of Prurient aside, this is just like an amazing achievement, and it really, really deserves to be heard. So like, if you're listening to this, go check Rainbow Mirror out. Like, check out a couple of the tracks I mentioned. You don't have to listen to the whole thing front to back. That's a bad idea. If you really like it, go like a disc at a time throughout the day. However you want to experience this thing, just like make sure you do, because it does deserve to be experienced by a lot of people. And hopefully, like, if it is, it'll turn a lot more people onto Dominic Furnow's like entire discography, which is, you know, a very challenging one, but one of the more fascinating discographies in electronic music. So get on it. That's all I have to say about that. It's great. It's amazing. It's great. Do it. You won't regret it. It's great.
And if anybody has bought the 7-side LP to this, we would very much appreciate a donation to the Indieheads podcast. We won't pay you back. But your contribution is greatly appreciated.
You will be paid
not on
clout.
my paycheck, friend. I fucking came so close. I was just going to go ahead and buy this thing, but it's $150.
Okay,
$150.
That's a lot. That's a lot of
You
It's-
said 7
that
LP,
is money.
then I just realized, like, oh yeah, that beats the Sun Kill Moon album, which I have.
Oh,
on
by-
vinyl.
by a large margin.
3 discs.
3
This
discs.
thing is like half an hour longer than the Epic.
Jesus Christ.
Oh god, it's so good though.
The Madman.
So good. The Madman. He did it.
Is that the longest album you've listened to?
Like ever? I don't know. That's definitely the longest album I've listened to.
The fact that you said I don't know is like
is incredible.
that's wild to me. That a 3.5 hour
I-
long album is not the longest one you've listened to.
I'm not sure. I'll have to do some research. I feel like there's one that I'm forgetting that was longer, but I really don't know.
I mean, I have no place to criticize considering I did spend, in 2 4-hour chunks, I listened to an 8-hour techno mix this week, so, I feel you.
Oh boy.
That's true. I feel like if you can listen to this podcast, you can get through like a disc and a half of Rainbow Mirror. Same commitment. Probably easier to listen to Rainbow Mirror.
This is slightly more abrasive.
Only
All right, well, that was a lot of albums. I'm glad that we really did a comprehensive look at bleeps and bloops from this year, and yeah, some good ones this year. I thought this year was for me personally, it was a lot that I really liked, and there weren't really any that were transcended for me. There isn't a electronic album in my top 15 this year, which is kind of a bummer. And that's maybe just a personal thing, but I'm hoping we get it next. I mean, we're gonna get John Hopkins next year, so hopefully that will fill that void in my life. Also new Shlomo next year, probably. So yeah.
All right. So we're going to wrap up this podcast with 2 things. First thing, next episode, we will begin our podcast awards. We'll have 3 parts for you guys, the awards, and then the album of the year list, which will be split into 2 parts, as we always do. I'm very excited about it. Our list is looking good. We have actually not thoroughly discussed what we want to pick for the awards yet, but our album of the year list, it's looking good, folks. Be excited.
We've nominated all the awards. They will be selected and discussed soon.
Yes. So that'll be our next episode, is beginning the podcast awards. And our second bit that I want to talk about, actually, because I just got some breaking news. Pitchfork, more like rich dorks. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode of the Indieheads podcast, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Matty, please retire.
I will never retire, alright? Asking me to retire is like asking Abraham Lincoln to
go to a play.
go to I was trying to remember what the drill tweet is about
I think
doing
you
his
were
post.
gonna say, show up to my house and tell me to log off. I will never log off.
You guys are all cowards. I will never retire. I'm going to be the Terry Funk of this podcast game. I will never retire. Can you tell that I got back into wrestling a month ago?
No.
Well, now you do. Anyways, hope you guys enjoy this podcast. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Oh my god, that made it in the episode?
What? Yeah, we're still recording. Yeah, I'm still recording right now.
Oh god.
You want to say bye? You want to say bye to everybody?
Goodbye,
Okay.
folks.
This is what happens after we finish a podcast. It's just this for this is behind the scenes right here.
It's still recording.
This is inside baseball if nobody cared about baseball.
Folks, alright, bye.